All right, so this is the overview of everything that we're going to cover for the next 8 days. And it's all based off on that pyramid, the PLMM pyramid. And so as we go through, we're just going to briefly outline all the pyramid, the different steps, and how they all fit together. And then as we go through the consecutive conversations, you'll have a reference point to where we are in the whole.
Okay.
So the ISDNA, the Industry Solution Foundation, that's the core of the positioning. That's where you find out what it is that your company is actually, or your client is actually doing, and how the potential customers are looking for your client, and how you can position them using questions so that they end up being the solution for the market. So in that respect, questions are the answers. Our stackable cybernetic business system is called PLMM. The definition of ISDNA, do you want to talk about that a little bit, Russ?
Yeah, the ISDNA was a term, it sounds a bit technical, but really in the end it evolved from one of my mentors, Mike Koenig of Traffic Geyser, who I'm sure you're familiar with. He's been a mentor of mine through the years in a lot of different courses that I've taken, and I feel it's important to give him and also my mentor, Jay Townley from Schwinn Bikes, Vice President of Schwinn Bikes, who is my mentor in the market research industry, and I've worked with him on many large clients for many years. These are my two market research trainers, and it evolved with the conversation where the frequently asked questions and the should ask questions are often very different. And the frequently asked questions are what the market is asking, and for those who are in non-online or offline market research, frequently asked questions were things that came in on surveys, like the questions that you asked your client, obviously, around the water cooler or sitting in their offices. The questions that they think are important to their business, and which you have also pointed out are not necessarily what the world thinks is important. So we have to find out what the frequently asked questions are and transform them into the questions that they should be asking. And what that does is when you extract the keywords from frequently asked questions, you're able to find out, the frequently asked questions are the questions that the market is currently typing in the search engine when it comes to our business.
Right.
The should ask questions are the new questions that are going to still contain those keywords, but we're going to translate those keywords into meaningful painkillers. Mm-hmm. Those are the frequently asked, those are the should ask questions.
Right.
And a lot of our students, I got to keep these straight. Frequently asked questions are what the search engines actually bring up as results, hopefully around your product or service, right?
Right.
The should ask questions are what the company is hoping you'll ask, and or questions that are more constructive to driving you towards a purchase of a solution and or solving your problem.
Right.
So it's not one specific thing. It's not always product centric.
Right.
It can be just solving any kind of pain, and a pain can be as big as a toothache or cancer, and as small as not finding the right nail gun or the right nails to fit the nail gun. So it's really perspective. So that's what the ISDNA. And now ISDNA means industry solution. It can also mean innovator's solution. So what we use it for is to help people understand that you have to become an innovator in your industry, and we get into a little bit the innovator's dilemma and all that in later presentations.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, we can move forward.
The three primary purposes of the ISDNA process. One is to help you extract the appropriate FAQ keywords that he was just talking about so that we can use them in phase 2 for market analysis. The second is to help you expand your current FAQ keywords into broader topics and themes by enhancing the original questions, the should ask questions that he was just talking about. And the third one is to help you position yourself or your client as the only viable solution or painkiller in a given industry.
And that's the main thing that became really clear to me is he or she who asks the better question tends to win the persuasion game. So it's not merely some kind of technical, the word ISDNA is a bit technical. It's not really some kind of technical voodoo. The purpose is to drive us up the pyramid of promotion and the perpetual lead magnet machine into the process of literally crafting questions that are addictive on Twitter land and Facebook in your 147 character spaces. Because he who has thought through the frequently asked questions and translated them into should ask questions with addictive headlines gets 100% more clicks than people who are just extracting non-persuasion based.
And it's also in a social sphere. People will actually start talking about that conversation and sharing those questions with other people in that environment.
Becomes
that's
viral.
really what you want.
That's right. And what's even crazier and subtle and hard to really pick up in this initial presentation is that the translation of questions that are frequently being asked are not necessarily the questions that should be asked, but more importantly, if you cast doubt in people's mind by using gray area, they're more likely to click, especially in small space headlines that are feed active or on the one feed that we put in the next section. In the section 4 and 5, we talk about the one feed to rule them all. So I just want everybody watching this to be aware that the reason we're doing this, how important it is to start with a solid foundation, because we're going to create an addictive, slippery slope, viral headline by focusing on gray area that casts doubt into the mind of the person who sees the first question. And they're going to click and go to your site, and they're going to see you as the only viable option. That's what triggered that for me.
Right.
The only viable option means that you're the only one who constantly helps them cast doubt on their current solutions. And you do that by going from frequently asked questions to should ask questions. Very subtle nuance, but if you don't start with this, you're not able to actually build on the right persuasion answers with the same keywords that we need them to research in Kraken, TOKT, and the rest.
Right. All right. So this is Network Empire training. We start off with what is Network Empire? Why dominate a market? How dominate a market, right? So to me, market domination has been my passion for a very long time. And I think ever since Russ and I first got together, market domination was that carrot that's been out there, and we've been attempting to construct all of the automation needed to get from here to there for the last 6 or 7 years. Okay. And so for me, market domination is to be in control of all of the platforms that a person is going to access, or at least the majority of the platforms, that a person is going to wend their way through during the process of a buying cycle. Okay? So, and during that process, wending their way through that path, they need to come to the recognition that I am the only viable option. Right? So that leads obviously to the question, what is a buying cycle? For me, there's 7 steps in a buying cycle. The first one, let's take flat panel TVs. You saw the TV that I have in the other room. I went to my friend's house, he's got a flat panel TV, and I'm like, wow, I might want one of those. So there's the initial inquiry. I don't know anything about flat panels. I don't know what kind of technology there is out there, so I'm just going to start looking to find out basic information about what are my options. Past that point, there's specific information. You get to that next level of granularity about particular products. So my friend's got a Sony, so then I'm going to go look at the Sony products. And he likes Sony, but as I'm doing reviews, as I'm looking at what other people are talking about Sonys, there's mixed reviews. Some people like them for this reason, other people don't like them for that reason. One person hung it up in the bedroom, and from the perspective of the bed, they can't see the image well, so you're looking for that broad social proof at that point. Finally, I determine which brand it is that I'm going to buy. Okay? So out of all of these, everybody's really happy with, what's a popular brand besides Sony?
LG.
LG. People are
Samsung is very popular.
Samsung. Okay, so I've got it down to LGs and Samsungs maybe, and so now I'm looking to try to figure out exactly which model, right? So I want that specific granular technology. I want something that's, I go into the store and I look at it and I'm like, okay, I want something that's like 32 inches. And so now I've got choices between this and who's saying what about those particular models. Past that point, yeah, who's saying what about those particular models? That's the next thing I'm going to go do is look for social proof, reviews, and people experience, talk to my friends, that kind of thing. And then, okay, I finally decided on the exact model, and so now I'm going to go online and I'm going to look to see who can provide me the best price, including shipping. So those are the 7 steps that you would wend your way through, some of them faster, some of them slower, depending usually on the purchase price and how important that purchase is for you, as to how much time you take and how long you spend in each one of these particular segments. So then the next question is, how do I manage to be in all of those places where my customer, because that's a lot of breadth to cover, right? There was technical stuff, there's reviews, there's, and you're winding your way back and forth between all of those things. And the other thing is, how can I convince people that my solution is the best solution, right? So those 3 things are the things that make up market domination. And the ubiquity and the intelligent positioning and the only viable option are most easily obtained through our stackable system, which is PLMM.
So, as an introduction to the overall course, I like to keep coming back to the stackable system here for several reasons. Because we've designed Theme Zoom through the years, and now with Matt on Domination Studio, with 2 things in mind. That both your business processes and your understanding of human beings are stackable. So when we talk about cybernetics is really the infusion of human behaviors and predictable or unpredictable behaviors with technology functions. And that's why the video on simplicity is so key to how we designed our systems of education. And it's something for you to come back to. If there's a point where things begin to feel convoluted or confused, then you should come back and ask yourself, what is the simple function of the layer of the stackable pyramid that we're on?
Right.
The main thing to understand is that binary function, on, off, that switch, that's not only true with how technology has been stacked for the last 10, 15 years, actually the last 30 years, but also when it comes to why human beings click on a button, a banner, why they follow a call to action, why they type a specific keyword in the search engine. It may seem really complex why they do those things, but my background in neuroscience and in neuromarketing has shown me that on switch is created by dopamine. And when you understand exactly how to craft your copy and craft your headlines, craft your questions ultimately, which is why we start with the questions.
Right.
Their behaviors are disappointingly predictable. And so what you're going to need to do is become more predictable to yourself and be able to take actions that are predictable and incredibly simple. Although this system is going to be, as you begin to go through our system, you're going to say this is perfectly obvious. It's not it's obvious only in retrospect. As Mr. Whiteside said, you can't predict, there's no way you could have predicted the internet based on the first transistor. Similarly, there's no way that we could have predicted the incredible profitable power of this system based on the first version of Theme Zoom. So that's what I just wanted to say about that.
Right. So to come back to the perpetual lead magnet machine, to come back to that stackable system, our original objective was market domination, right? Ubiquity, the idea that the customer finds us to be the only solution, and what was the third thing? Oh, shoot. The point is, PLMM is designed to systematically remove your competition using the intelligent positioning. That's in layer 1 and 2. The ISDNA, the market research keyword discovery, that is your intelligent positioning. The painkiller communication, That's in layers 3 and 4. The layers 3 is where you set up your technical foundation, so that 4 you can put that painkiller communication on top of that technical foundation. And then online ubiquity is layers 5 through 7. That takes you from your one feed, you set up your one feed system, and you plug all of your social media communications into that one feed system, and it goes out and goes absolutely everywhere. So within that, you achieve those 3 things that we're looking at from market domination through this 7-layer system. Intelligent positioning, market analysis, competitive analysis, and demographic analysis. Okay, so that's that, where we start with the questions, the FAQs and the SAQs, and we use those keywords to delve into the market. We understand the markets, we understand the pain in the market, we understand our competitors, where it is that they're focusing, where they're not focusing. And then the demographics, our people, the folks that are your potential customers, more information about them, everything from age to gender to what do they do with their spare time, how do they think, how do they relate to you. Painkiller communications, Russell's forte, the painkiller headlines, the painkiller content, the painkiller videos, and the painkiller autoresponders. So you find those pains as you're doing that initial ISDNA, the positioning, you find those pains and then you hit it hard with all of your communication so that you've got that common language and always pointing out where their pain is and how you solve their pain. And then online ubiquity is search engine results, social media, RSS. So that gives you that entire picture.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about the ISDNA questions. And again, ISDNA. We use a lot of DNAs in our lecture, and I've actually had some of my students complain. And I'm going to just get straight with that right now. And when you think DNA, think of a simple system that has stacked over time. And I've made it more complex by giving it the word DNA. But I do that because when you're using Domain Web Studio, it's important for you to be aware that there are clusters in your empire. There are clusters of words, there are clusters of sentences, there are clusters of questions, and there's clusters of solutions. Ultimately, you have a cluster of sites that literally own your market. So while DNA may sound more medical, we used it because it does imply, like you'll see it's very popular to talk about your business DNA. It's a very common thing at seminars and lectures. So we're taking it out of the realm of complexity, and we're actually using the words DNA on each layer to make it as simple as possible, but not simpler. So it implies the limits of that layer, but it also expands to allow you to customize that DNA, that keyword cluster, the EK DNA.
Right.
The good news is there's only 7 DNAs in our system. So if you can use those and learn, what's that?
I'm DNA'd out.
You're DNA'd out. If you learn those, you won't have to learn anymore. And it allows you a bucket to hold a few ideas. Otherwise, we would have to have given you 500 steps. It's like being told that the internet is made up of 900,000 parts like that. These are the processes of the human cell. And oh yeah, we really understand it.
Right.
Well, the reality is that you're not going to understand the total interconnectedness and complex behavior of the internet as a marketer. And a lot of marketers are trying to do that, and they're trying to understand and integrate social media. Well, the challenge is that although we can't make it ultimately simple for you, we can make it as simple as possible and not simpler. And we can automate that for you as long as we stack the system. So that's why we use DNA. So just think industry solution. That means if you use the word DNA as parts made up of or made up of. Okay, we're talking about this layer is your industry solution. That's all the questions that you're going to answer and what it's made up of. So what your industry is made up of, the questions that your industry is made up of, the solutions that the industry is made up of. Okay? So the foundation of the system is simultaneously creates your intelligent positioning and extracts the most profitable keywords using our hard technologies and asks questions in a given market. The reason that, go ahead and next slide. The reason that this layer is more complex is because, Brian talked about how it was one of his more challenging parts, this original inception.
Right.
And that's because you have to start thinking, you have to start getting into the crazy complexities of a market, which is essentially the human mind, which is generally crazy most of the time, and try to figure out what's going on in there.
Right.
Because most of the questions, this is frequently asked questions, most of the questions people ask are not even the right question. And yet, the questions are valid. You don't want to say, that's not the right question, right?
Right.
So you use their right question. You say, okay, well, the answer to your question is maybe, or no, or yes, but here's a better question.
Right.
That prevents you from needing to add that question. It's almost like the drills versus the holes. People aren't, you're not selling drills, right? You're selling the holes.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody comes to the store and you find a better way to give them the holes, and you render drills obsolete, well, the drill manufacturer, they're not too happy with that, are they? But you actually have to be willing to render yourself obsolete in order to really understand the true questions in the market. And we'll get into this with energy and alternative energy and the rest. Because really the pain of that market isn't so much, the deep desire to have a solar panel sticking off of their roof. It's to lower their heating costs.
It's also the sheer cost.
Yeah, the pain is their energy bill.
The pain is the bill I got to pay every month.
But this is very related to the ISDNA. What are the pains and the questions that the market is made up of?
Right.
And what is the deep-seated drive and true meaning behind those questions? And what we begin to find is even if there's 93,000 questions, or toss me that sheet here, or the 70 questions that Brian brought with him, or how many questions are there? 20?
30 some odd?
I think she came up with at least 25, 30 questions.
Yeah, and these are client questions, and we're going to talk about that as well. It's a different way to get questions. It's not that there's anything wrong with these, but we'll find that there's only a couple themes behind this whole market, emotionally.
Right.
And that'll be very important in the upper DNA levels, such as article DNA, headline DNA, and all the DNAs that are on the top part.
So one of the interesting things I find about the internet, marketing before was always a one-way communication, right? You put out your marketing, it's an ad in a newspaper, it's a billboard, it's a radio ad, it's a television ad, and it's not until the person actually walks in the store that you can actually engage them in a conversation. And so with the advent of the internet, it's changed all of that, right? You can engage them in a conversation immediately with the very first question that they start to ask.
But not only that, you can engage them at different points in that process.
Bingo.
Right.
All of those steps, all of the different 7 steps in the buying cycle.
And you could be hitting them at any one of those points where they might be along that 7-step cycle.
And the key is to know when you are and where you are in that process. And what we find, the reason we created the system is what we find is that most people really do not fully grok or understand where they're standing at any given time in that process, let alone as a marketer, where you are in that very moment in your business. Am I writing sales copy? Am I doing keyword research? Am I using Domain Web Studio for this, for that? This is why people get lost. This is why they stay forever in Kraken, right? Matt always noticed that, before we developed Domain Web Studio, we'd have
treadmill.
They get addicted to keyword research because that dopamine's flowing.
Because it's safe. I don't actually have to engage my customer. I can just stay here in keyword research land.
Still silo surfing.
Silo surfing is what Matt calls it. Because questions are the answer. Except you can't. Eventually, you have to move on.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Well, everybody, So these are the solutions that we've provided. This course is a solution so that you don't get stuck in one category. You need to. If you find yourself getting stuck or spending more than an hour on something, you probably need to air out and go to one of the other layers. Have a different look at perspective. So keywords Sue, I'll let you get in this one.
So once you've come up with your questions, your FAQs and SAQs, you can extract the keywords from those different questions.
And here's some softwares and technologies that are not so much things that you have to use. So those of you watching, and Brian uses some of his own that we probably want to add here. You don't need to go out and buy these things. I wanted to put these softwares up so that you could see what I have used through the years to engage in some extremely complex professional market research. Okay, we've used SurveyMonkey. Go ahead and quickly go through these. Yahoo Answers, Zendesk, eHow, Do-It-Yourself Network. The reason I write these up here is because I want all of you to be aware that all of these technologies focus 100% on questions.
Right.
You're sitting on questions that you might not even be aware of. I had one student come to me and say, I have like 90,000 questions in Zendesk for 2 years of help desk support with a team of 10 people. I'm like, well, can you parse that? Parse means to go through it and, bring all those
Categorize
questions
it.
and his answer was, well, yeah. And this is a guy who was about ready to spend 50 grand on a market research campaign.
Wow.
I'm like, it's okay to do that, but use the data you have.
Yeah.
And it's very common for organizations to. We recently read something, I can't remember which marketer it was, but it was a really brilliant ad campaign by a well-known marketer. And he made a great point. It's easier to know what's going on in the outside world than it is inside your own organization. It's true with data as well. Whether it's IT debt or just technology or databases, I find that a lot of data that you've already got is being thrown away. So ask your own clients that, as well. Find out what questions they might have, what databases they might have, and get more organized with it. Sometimes it's just writing a simple SQL query.
Right.
And there's programming, but there's things that can be made. Okay, I wanted you to start with why, because not only is it inspiring, it really simplifies. It was a very lateral, simple system. And I feel like a lot of companies and their marketing departments, as well as their research departments, have it exactly backwards. And he made the point that they do. For example, the difference between, say, a company like Apple or versus AT&T.
Right.
And it has to do with why people do the things that they do. And you'll see this as a recurring theme. If you're able to get to the why of any matter, you can write a better headline, you can create a better product ultimately, and you can ask better questions. And notice that Simon Sinek's thing, I'll start with why, he really had to know how to answer the right questions. And ultimately, my point with that video is that the right questions are not so much syntax as they are personal meaning. And if you strike, you're going to strike gold if you begin to find the personal meaning that an entire demographic or group or raving fan or user has when you get into that. So I wanted to make sure that you realize that even though we're dealing with technology and incredible power with Domination Studio, Kraken and TLKT and other things that we're doing, cybernetics still means it's for humans.
Right.
We're teaching cybernetic philosophy. Okay? Don't forget that this stackable system is made up of human beings, and they're very binary. Okay, and they're really looking for meaning. They're looking for you to provide the meaning of their product, of your product, and easily extract that meaning for them. And as soon as you tell them why you exist and what you're about, they're going to buy it just because they feel that you understand the real question.
Right.
If they don't feel like you understand the real question, it doesn't matter how much research in Domination Studio you do.
It's all about trust.
Yeah, trust is part of it, but meaning is even more important.
Yeah.
And meaning and trust are not necessarily the same thing. Now, what happens is that if they feel like you have meaning, they do trust you.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because there's other reasons that you can get trust. We'll get into that later in the AD.
Right.
Okay. So KD&A is keywords.
Yeah, I want to back you up for a second
Sure.
here because interesting experience from my perspective, trying to help some of my clients. Not all of them have a clear reason to themselves for why it is that they're doing what they're doing. And the interesting part about that is that they usually have a tougher time getting their business to be profitable. They usually have a more difficult time finding the motivation that they need to drive their business. And so as a consultant, you get into that place where you're trying to help them do their marketing and you try to get to the essence of the why it is that they're in business. If that why is clear to them, or if you can help them clear up that why, then the positioning just becomes so much more rich. It takes on a life of its own at that point, and you can start to wrap all those questions around those whys and drive it home.
Yeah, exactly. Why does your company exist? And we call this congruency.
Yeah.
It's very tricky because branding and positioning is about personal congruency.
Yeah.
And a company is no different. In fact, the collapse of a lot of American values right now in the corporate sector, and it can be argued that there's no collapse and so on and so forth, but there is. There's a change of value systems in this new macro trend. Seth Godin calls it a new macro trend, and he calls it macro trend number 5, giving back. Where companies, it was realized in the American collapse of the economy in the last 3 years, where Wall Street kind of took advantage of a lot of things. People are now looking for meaning in the corporate. They want to feel like they trust a company, right? This is what you just said about sort of meaning and trust. And they also want to feel like that company understands them. And they also want to feel like the company has a meaning beyond just making money.
Yeah.
And that is a positioning. A company doesn't have to take that positioning, but it's sure good with marketing when they do.
Yeah.
Because that's part of our new macro trend.
It's really interesting with the rise of the industry, as you saw in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, large businesses became more and more plastic. That logo was put up in place of faces, and instead of the local company that, the local shop that you walk into and the guy who works there, who owns the place, and there's that rapport that happens, everything became colder and more professional, right? And so I see the internet really breaking that down.
It's taking it and it's spinning it on its head.
Absolutely.
Yeah, social media is a significant part of why personal trust, personal congruency, and branding is undermining what Sue just called we call that the corporate shield logo. It's okay to have corporate shields, but for smaller companies, it's better to have a poster child coupled with that. Every company has a champion, and there's been numerous tests that show. You can take, for example, Virgin, right? Everybody knows it's him. He's a significant part of that brand, right? So we have to be really careful to create when we're creating cold, impersonal branding. So branding and positioning has to do with starting with why, understanding why the company exists,
Right.
and understanding why you personally exist.
Yeah.
And as a consultant, for those of you watching who are consultants, you have to get your trip together with your company before you walk into a company that's, you got to apply this. Why are you doing what you're doing?
One of the biggest questions I ask when I'm meeting with a client for the first time is, I just throw that one out. I say, why do you want to have a website?
That's perfect. It starts with that.
It does.
And you know what? What's interesting about that is it opens up a 1-hour conversation that is coming directly from him, and he either hesitates and questions the thought, or he opens up and tells you everything about why he wants to have a website. And
that's
it
very
leads to that process.
And I would like to say, to add to what Brian just said for our listeners, that is really something that I want you to do. Like, you need to have that initial call. So I've actually watched hands-on, at AdLit and other companies.
Right.
Salesmen and consultants push that process too hard. When that opening occurs, just like Brian was saying, that's professional.
Yeah.
And I read another document recently by an SEO who makes greater than $100,000 a year, and he goes door to door with clients. He flies to city. He does the same thing that Brian just described. He allows that client that time in those initial icebreakers,
Yeah.
where a lot of people will push through and what do I get, me. With that initial moment of letting the client open up, even if it takes an hour, it never amounts to anything. You're going to tighten that relationship. It might come in later on. It's good karma, okay, that's what I'm saying. But more importantly, there's a psychology and neuroscience there.
Yeah.
Questions are the answer. And what happens is when you open up that question, you even have to have a willingness to render yourself obsolete.
Absolutely.
And that's the scary part. Sue and I have done this many times where by the time that person is done talking, they realize these are not the droids you're looking for.
Yep.
You do not need a website. I don't need it. Why am I in this business? I don't know. I've had clients that actually walk away and said, you know what, I'm going to stick with my wife's business, or I didn't need this at all.
Yeah.
They call me back 3 years later or so, or 2 months later or whatever, with something else.
Right.
All right. But I was the catalyst that transformed their lives by saying, this is not congruent with who you are. This is not congruent with who you are. And guess what that does? That sets you out as a distinction of not just merely the ultimate online technologist, but as the ultimate personal and business consultant coach. And that's really scary stuff because people don't like to render themselves obsolete.
Right.
So that's one suggestion I would.
It doesn't scare me at all, because by getting that information extracted from them, or at least getting that conversation started, it opens up doors. It keeps them thinking on that critical path. And then I've had people walk exactly what you're saying. I've done a simple market research for them. They spend a little bit of money on that, and they came back to me, and that market research saved us $100,000 from launching this site, because we realized that market was saturated and there was too many people in that market, and we weren't in a ready position.
Right.
And then they called me back 2 or 3 years later with a new project.
Right.
Exactly.
So
and that's right. And if you can automate the processes of not having to waste your time on site, that's better. But when you do have that client interview and they do pass your lead process and they do make it through the gates, it's good to do that, and you will have immense rewards for doing it.
Absolutely.
So that, I think we've kind of gotten, that's branding and positioning, but this is what we're talking about, making yourself the only viable option,
Right.
either as a consultant or as your company being the only viable option in the market. It's all about questions being the answer and being willing to render your whole idea and business model obsolete if necessary.
Right.
So we're in the keyword DNA area. Is now that you've gone through that process, you're going to be ready to get technical, which is where people who love keyword research like to go.
But it's about so much more than just keywords. It's about actually taking your market apart and understanding how the market flows. There's several things that flow through a market, right? There's interest and questions and queries, so you're going to see some places that get a whole bunch of traffic. Most of the traffic is usually contained in those early educational areas because people find out they're either doing an initial query, they actually have no desire to buy anything, they're just looking for information, or they tend to spend more time in the educational phase than they do actually in the buying phase. Once they have enough information to be able to make an intelligent decision, they make the decision, they buy the product, boom. So you're looking, on the one hand, you're looking for where the traffic is, and on the other hand, you're looking for where the money is. And this is pay-per-click money. That's the only way that we've really got to value this at this point. But wherever you're finding that pay-per-click money, you got two things going on. It's either pain that's being because those keywords are indicating a pain, those aspects of a market. I've seen entirely rich veins of a market. For example, a couple of years ago, I took apart the housing market, right? And I'm drilling into all these things, housing, and I'm doing phase one in the DNA process. And I've got this one theme that's like 10 times more money than all the rest of the themes on the page. And as I look into it, I'm like, oh, that's the only thing that's talking about loans. And in the entire housing industry, loans are where the money is. Now, it makes sense as I back up and I look at it, I'm like, yeah, of course, all the money is made in the loan side, but still it's just fascinating to watch where those money things run. As we go through the slides, you'll see some other interesting things. You'll find affiliate products, affiliate keywords run with the money, and you'll find that the pain runs with the money. So you're interested in where those kinds of opportunities are, as well as where the traffic's flowing. So you're basically, when you're doing that market analysis, you're looking for flows. So once you've got the market analyzed from that particular perspective, you come at it from the other perspective. Where's the competition? Who are my major competitors? Where are they focused? What are they doing? And why? And so as you answer those questions, that's my favorite thing at the moment. Kraken actually shows you the questions to ask. And then as you dig into it a little bit further, sometimes you have to approach it from a couple different directions. The answers to those questions are what gives you insight to the market that you won't find anywhere else.
Pockets of pain, pockets of money. Kraken gives you that, Domination Studio helps you organize it, and then you can formulate your question.
Exactly.
And questions are values. So values are kind of an abstraction, but Kraken turns those values into words. So
also, what happens here is when you're doing this type of research, you also can get into the mindset of your competitors as well as your clients. And you can see what's the bridge that connects the two together.
Right.
And that's something what a lot of people don't actually realize they need to be aware of, is what is the golden bridge between the two and how do they connect?
Or do they connect? I oftentimes find markets where my competitors are not connecting well with the clients. They're carrying
They're
on
off
one
the mark,
conversation
yes.
over here.
Yeah.
Competitors,
Totally off the
yeah. So then the other aspect about keyword DNA is when you're talking about market domination. Market domination doesn't just consist of one domain, right? Obviously, we talked about before, you want to be ubiquitous, and at the very least, ubiquity is going to include all the social platforms where everybody's communicating about things regarding your products and services. But usually, when you're talking about a good-sized market, you've got more than one actual owned domain, one domain that the company owns. So this can be a whole bunch of different things, right? You've got normally your, what I call a money site or blog, where the actual transactions take place, where the products are actually offered. It's your main go-to place when you want to make a purchase. But then you've often got other information sites. You maybe have a wiki, you maybe have a forum, you maybe have a customer help desk area with FAQs, all of those other kinds of things that sometimes it's on subdomains of one domain, but oftentimes too it's on...
I've got a nickname for them. I call them education collectors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about that is that each one of those domains often has a radically different keyword DNA. Okay, so all of those keyword DNAs taken together, I call the EPA keyword DNA, right? The EPA meaning over, but a couple of certification students ago, he renamed it to being Empire keyword DNA, which I thought was brilliant. So that's your eKDNA. Keyword DNA, we talk about being the DNA for one particular domain, and then the eKDNA is your entire collective set of all of these keywords are good keywords for somewhere in my empire.
We'll show pictures of that because they really need pictures.
Yeah, we get into that.
So basically, the keyword DNA is your story, and the eKDNA is the story.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
The Empire keyword.
Yeah. So
It does tell a story. I mean,
it does, absolutely it does. Multiple stories.
you've got to be able to extract that story from that unstructured data, and that's what we're here to help you do. It's what technologies do.
So obviously, we've created tools that help you accomplish this. We've got Kraken, we've got TLKT, we've got Domain Web Studio. Kraken, the idea behind Kraken for me is that it helps you actually take the markets apart because it looks at everything in terms of themes. And then the last keyword tool, I use that oftentimes. It's very helpful. If I'm on the phone with somebody, I'm doing that initial phone consult because TLKT does drills really fast and it gives me quite a spread of keywords. I'll oftentimes use that while I'm on the phone just to get a feel for what's going on in their market. It can also help to supply additional keywords because Kraken's designed more, the VOMA side of Kraken is designed more for what keywords are important to the market. It doesn't bring in all of those really juicy long tails.
It's more holistic. It's looking at a broader base
Yeah.
of the vertical market.
Yeah, the TLKT doesn't have any filters on it whatsoever. It'll even bring back keywords that aren't actually relevant to the conversation, or at least don't appear to be relevant to the conversation at first glance, because they got pulled off of websites that talk about a bunch of different things, not just. But it's interesting to look at all of those keywords in terms of, okay, how do these keywords that don't relate? Sometimes they don't at all. Sometimes you just throw them out. But Larry's there, the LSI technology is there if you want to bring it down into a more thematic relevance. And then Domain Web Studio, which we get into, which helps you take a look at it from your business model perspective, making sure that the keywords that look good are actually going to make you money on your bottom line, and then take you all the way through that process into promotion and syndication and actually make you ubiquitous. So then the technical foundation, phase 3, is where we get into actually starting to put the bits and pieces together. You buy your domain, you get it hosted somewhere, you got your banking requirements, you got your all of the technical stuff, and without that technical foundation, everything else doesn't have any place to actually sit. So we run through, you're very familiar with that, I know you got a bunch of sites up, but we have a bunch of guys that, they're coming into it pretty much for the first time, so we try to help speed them through that. And then layer 4, is where we start to get into the actual painkiller side of things.
Yeah, and painkiller is, we're talking about, again, there's the DNA again. It means made up of. And so it's really, what is your articles made up of? What are your articles made up of? And what are your, VDNA means video. And VDNA just simply means you can use a lot of the scripting. You can use for scripts what you used for articles. And that's pretty helpful because I think people feel that they need to duplicate or start from scratch. And there's no need to do that. You can actually turn articles into presentations and presentations into videos and so on.
Yeah, we've done that with the energy project. We approached them and said, look, here's the video. You've already been filming all of your presentations. Why don't rewrite all of that? Just transcribe it.
Right.
And we'll put that into content. we'll repurpose that content. We can extract just the podcast component of it,
Right.
and we can start to repurpose that content. Why reinvent the wheel? Why have to rewrite all your presentations for the web?
Right.
We can take that and repurpose it.
Right, and that's the challenge. And a lot of people forget that the
Yeah.
one feed to rule them all and everything is tied to not just the typical backlinking structures and not just the typical twittering. You use all the components. For example, a slideshow presentation, which can be made from an article and then into a video, can be submitted to the 5 slideshow sites like Scribe and the rest, which have incredibly high page rank because people are too lazy to do it. Therefore, they're not saturated. And then you get backlinks, those go through the feeds, you mix those feeds with other high page ranking feeds in your same theme, and you get indexed immediately and immediately pop on the first page with almost no effort. And this is stuff that we really don't want to tell people. but the reason is because actually if we revealed how simple it actually was to get on page 1 using those techniques, I mean, I don't know, it would be, I don't know what would happen if we just told everybody how easy it was to get on page 1 using Domain Web Studio and those techniques. But the main thing is that the problem is that people aren't structured enough
Right.
with that. So
Right.
you've got to put the keywords, let me go over here so I don't blind or black the thing out. Your values have been created, and then you know what the deeper mysteries are, the esoteric questions in your industry. You know where they're wrong, and you know, like Brian said, where they missed the mark.
Right.
You've got those questions, then you extract them using technology. That's where all the people fun with power tools.
Right.
You know, you're going to fail with power tools here if you don't do this stuff first. Then we can get your technical foundation set up, and that's when your dopamine starts to really get up because you're really aware that things are starting to happen. You start to build your infrastructure, right? Oh, they can't see me because I'm standing up. My head's covered. I'm going to sit over here like this.
It's a nice horse show shot, though.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hello, everyone. And it's here where we have by this time, it's going to be, you're going to write better articles and better video scripts and better headlines. Because you're going to know where that gray area of that pain is. And you're going to have the specific and exact, most profitable keywords coming out of your mouth, coming into your presentations, coming into your slideshows, your easy articles. And when you create what I call the one feed system, you're going to be able to repurpose every single aspect of your content without all the vague, ambiguous terms that people use. A lot of people create articles and they really don't know what they're doing. We're going to have the precise genetic code of the most compelling, most highly converting articles, slideshows, presentations, podcasts, videos, you name it, all being syndicated through the one feed with headlines that get an increase of 50 to 80% click-through compared to your competitors, and it's automated.
Can I interject there, Russ? Another thing which is really good about the stackable process is the significant savings you'll make with the repurposing of the content in the different media formats by having a clear structure of what you want to do. Because typically the guys will either spin the same thing 1,000 times, just throw it out there, or they go create all the new content.
Yes.
With no purpose behind what they're actually doing.
Yes.
Which thus increases the business cost and eats into the profit margin. So it's we've thought very carefully about this whole process all the way through from different perspectives. When Russell put us all together, he pulled all the perspectives together, and the whole system is designed to cut your cost, make you highly focused, and make you very clear of what you want to do, which thus makes the whole story easier to tell.
Exactly, and the biggest challenge people have had in the past, and we'll show this in different presentations, is at the article level, you still want your articles to be unique and the rest, but it's the repurpose on what we call micro content, the sizing down of using those content through feeds and mixing those feeds and putting them out through the networks. That's where people tend to fall down. They put way too much time in spinning articles, but you still need to have unique articles, and not enough time in using the content they already have.
Yes.
Right.
So video scripts and painkiller articles, and again, this is coming from the Mike Koenig legacy of making sure that your video scripts can relate to your articles. And don't reinvent the wheel. I actually have talked to students who spend a whole bunch of time just writing a new video script.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and presentations have gotten very popular. Obviously, you see all the slideshows like the one we're doing right here. You can easily turn this into a video, which we're doing right now. And the question will be, do I know how to if Sue lets me put this particular video into the public domain, I have to know which keywords are optimal to tag it with, this actual video. And we already know what it is. We're going to tag it with 3 or 4 keywords that are already being used in the industry, keyword research, blah, 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 ad nauseum, which we're also going to use words that aren't being used yet, that are proprietary. Because eventually our proprietary terms become words in the market, right? We're tailoring the market with our own standards. So we use those together. So this allows easy HTML headline extraction of layer 6. What happens here is that you're zooming in on a headline because the web right now is this stackable system that has become incredibly simplified to the point of 147 characters. And it's actually changing our brain. And if you know how to write a headline, you're going to actually, especially if you're a social media syndicated, you're going to really be getting optimal conversions. The problem is I see people who write fantastic headlines, syndicate them through the one feed through all the social media systems, but they don't have any calls to action, or they're not capturing the leads. Or worse yet, they have amazing headlines driving people to other people's sites.
Right.
What? This is why we call it premium syndication, because we want to make sure it's you all the way down.
Yeah, so that actually brings us into the next step, because once you've got your content created for your website, then you're going to finalize your blog. And that means you're going to put all your calls to action in there. You're going to put all of the extra pieces in there that allow you to take the painkiller content and turn it into a conversion. And then from there, you go into syndication, right? So you've got the painkiller content on your website. You can actually curate that content and put it on your blog. And then that blog goes out through your one feed to all of the social channels. And we'll probably talk about it a little bit, yeah.
And the feed, and the feed directories. The main thing is that there's almost nobody that I've ever met that understands how feed directories and feed pinging affects SEO. And so we're putting that into the Domain Web Studio application in the next release.
Yeah.
It's incredibly important, and the power is just, it's a serious nuclear detonation. When you have the correct keywords tied to the correct feeds with the correct splicing. And then a secondary benefit of that is through the social networks. You got to pick specific feeds to go through the social networks tied to your WR1 sites. We're going to get into that with you today. And then you have the one feed section is the reason we put Google Plus at the top. Google Plus has been the most challenging thing. I tried to give people we're going to go ahead and check and make sure the audio is.
You're good.
Are we good? Google Plus came into the picture because we're using Google Plus as a way to communicate how Google is changing, right? And I made an attempt to create a course that was disconnected from this entire process. And in retrospect, it's not that I wouldn't do it, it's just that I would, we're constantly evolving that course. It's available to all members. And it's much more useful for people who are part of the regular Network Empire members area, because they understand all the things that came before it. When you try to teach Google Plus from the perspective that Google actually wants you to use it, it's not such a good idea. Because you're going to be caught in another infinite loop of distraction, just like Facebook causes. And because Google Plus is an experiment, and they don't really care about the social media aspects of it. They care about owning your identity. And they care about verifying the authenticity of your account. And they care about connecting your personalized results and getting all the data they can with the old Google legacy results. They care about creating the ultimate login, where the search results when you're logged in are different from the results that when you're logged out, and changing the logged out results based on enough people voting for those algorithms and fusing retrieval algorithms with social algorithms. And if that didn't scare you enough, on top of that...
It's ironic because many people who are in my space will fight tooth and nail just to have our unpersonalized search available to us.
Right.
Having to cheat and code and do things just to get the results that we want to see on a generic scale.
Yeah.
And the personalization has just constantly overwhelmed us.
Right, and that's part of the game.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to teach you here, and then we can move on, because we're going to get into Google Plus a little bit,
Sure.
is I'm a Google Plus advocate, but I'm a very contrarian advocate I want you to totally hack your Google account. You have to hack your Google account. If you look at it from the perspective that Google has given you, you're going to be lost, literally. You're going to be lost. And so what I'm really trying to point out is that we get into the one feed. The one feed, there's two versions of it. There's the SEO Impact, which is what we're moving into with Domain Web Studio, where right now my spreadsheet, I have 14 different feeds that I mix together to generate a one feed for SEO. And each one of them is better if I focus on only 2 keywords at a time, I've discovered. And that's a little bit tricky, and it's not required, but this is what for a big market, that's what I would prefer to do. Google Plus is separate from that. We created a software that allows Google Plus. Google Plus will not give you an RSS feed. So what I want to do is I want to publish, when I publish the blog, when it's finalized, I want every single post that I go to go out to a Google account automatically. That publishes that. And then I want that Google feed to publish out to the world. These are optional things. You don't have to have them to succeed. And you can succeed really well with Domain Web Studio without doing all that stuff.
It just accelerates things.
It accelerates things because it's really nice when you have a listing and there's like 80 different people's faces under it, because right now, like 7 months ago, it was 14% of the users were logged in. Now it's 35%, and it's growing.
It's exponential.
Yeah, and if it's 80%, you're gonna want to make sure there's faces underneath your listings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so. I remember what I was going to say. No, just kidding. All right. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit into Google Plus as we move up the system, the stackable system, making things as simple as possible, but not simpler. I throw a monkey wrench in a little bit with our Google Plus course, but it is my hope that by the time you finish this course, you're going to understand how RSS works, how the one feed to rule them all works, the difference between using feeds for social spaces that are filled with actual real live customers, like an authentic Twitter account or your Facebook fan page, places where there are real customers and real potential prospects following you, versus an RSS feed, how you use an RSS feed to syndicate for SEO, or syndicating for our KDNA and our EKDNA, which are fancy words for the money keywords in your market, right? And I think the biggest problem people have had are looking at Google Plus and taking my course with the feeds, is they don't understand the difference between using RSS to populate content and headlines, clickable headlines, painkiller headlines for social environments, versus using RSS feeds to dominate SEO keyword clusters, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for the most part.
That's a huge issue, and part of it is because I've been working with my team, Sue and Matt, to create an awesome integration of these things and to automate the process. And some of our methods are proprietary because they're that powerful. And so coming up with the best way to communicate that with the least amount of confusion is what you'll definitely be walking away with in this course, and we'll do that over the next few days. Google++ is the tale of two Googles. Google threw this huge wrench in everybody's strategies because there's logged in results. We talked about this today, right, Brian? There's logged in results, but there's also personal results tied to Google legacy. So that's actually 3 different types of search engine results that you're scratching your head going, should I be considering all 3 of these? And the 2 big ones are personalized results and Google legacy, the old results. Our Google Plus course brings together this schizoid personality and is really designed to teach our users. We teach something that nobody else out there teaches, which is that you want to hack your Google Plus account. When I say hack, it's like if you were to use the instructions that Google Plus gives you and use Google Plus in the way that they want you to use it, you'd probably never get anywhere. If you use it with an SEO mindset of how they're integrating social environment into the Google dashboard, then you're going to do really, really well. In other words, if you're always thinking SEO, if you're always thinking the purpose of getting your keywords ranked, you're going to be able to bring the 2 personalities, the 2 pluses. 1 is the personalized results, 2 is Google regular search engine results. Okay? So we can move to the next slide.
Hello everyone, my name is Russell Wright from ThemeZoom.com and NetworkEmpire.com. Today I'd like to tell you a tale of 2.
So then you're going to be ready for the launch, and again, to go back onto the one feed, this is where everything comes together, and it's also the more complex side of things because you're actually going to use everything, all the power tools. That's Domain Web Studio, all of your research, your FAQ, SAQ, and again, you're going to have your SEO RSS feeds distinguished from your social media because, like in your case, for example, you have a client who's pretty large, right? I mean, it's a what, 10 million a year plus business.
Oh yeah, I think they're over 40 million actually.
Right, and the challenge that we have is like with SEO now is that social media is now becoming a required integral part. That's the only reason that I did a Google Plus course. It's like you have to have some social media knowledge.
Yeah, and I also think the biggest challenge for clients is it's a resources game. You know, you come to a firm that normally they're used to offline marketing and they have to go online, and I have to hire a community manager now to handle all of these things. How am I going to do that? Are you going to manage all those things for me, Brian? How am I going to juggle all those balls now? You're adding, 4 to 10 hours more to my 12-hour day. So you have to convey that to them in a logical process.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I'm an advocate of, you're either in social media or you're automating social media. And when one of the side bonuses of our process is that you're going to have all the requirements because you're so surgically targeted. You're so surgically targeted in the system that if you do things right, I consider like social media 1.0 to be Twitter accounts that have been created that are surgically targeted to your keyword DNA. And what people don't understand is that they surgically target the keywords. There's Twitter accounts with their keyword DNA and they're only growing followers who have similar keywords in there. You don't really need a community manager. Because why would you? They're already following you and you're already automatically syndicating your master headlines and article headlines to them automatically through your RSS syndication, through Domain Studio, or through whatever RSS system you're using.
But somebody has to generate that content.
That's a different topic. You just say community manager, and this is my point.
Yeah.
Someone has to generate the content, but when you realize how much gold you can extract from that coal, how much diamond you can extract from a piece of coal, people are using less than 90% of the potential retweets, potential headlines, potential sentences extracted from that they could be. Instead, they're getting distracted in hiring community managers. You can hire a community manager after you're making enough money out of the content you're already generating. Mm-hmm. And that's my beef with social media advocacy and the groundswell theory. Mm-hmm. It's like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And what's interesting about Google is from a systems programming perspective, from Sue's perspective, from a database programmer, I'm more of a marketer type. But I've had enough training from Matt and Sue to understand database, what they're trying to do with Googleplex. What they're simply trying to do is to bring all that into one unified space. That's why they don't make it easy for you to create an RSS feed out of Google+. They don't give you an RSS feed in or out. Because if they did, you can take control of your surgically targeted campaigns in a way that social media doesn't teach. For example, Google+, as soon as Google Plus came out, they took away on your news reader, which is an RSS reader. And those of you listening who don't understand RSS, who are confused by RSS, we're going to come back. We'll have a whole course on that. I'm building one right now in the members area. Don't worry about it. But the main thing is that whenever a company takes away your ability to create RSSs or to syndicate your own content or to communicate with them in their system, they're taking away your power, your ability to syndicate or repurpose content, and increase your rankings based on keywords. So that's my personal belief and what I've experienced about it. And as soon as Google Plus came out, the reader lost its shared reader feed. It was the single most powerful feature that Google had. It was at that point that I recognized that Google is not on your side when it comes to automating your SEO functions. And you have to hack your Google dashboard and still use it from a real identity, but use it in a way using Sue's WR1, WR2 webbing system to incorporate those feeds across all of it. We're going to explain what each one of these things mean. If you're feeling a little bit woozy because we're talking a bunch of technobabble, the cool thing is we're going to show you exact maps on how to do this. It's not rocket science. Well, almost, but it's pretty easy once you automate it, once we integrate it.
We want to teach the guys to work smart and not work hard.
Exactly.
And work efficient and not blow their budget.
Right.
Yeah. This is what we want to achieve through this whole process, is to work really. Russell's saying now, Russell's working smart, he's not working hard. And everybody else is says, it's the end of the world, but it's not.
Not only is it not the end of the world, it's made it I see things becoming more automated, but only with systems thinkers like Domain Web Studio. Part of the reason Matt's here is because we're taking all that complexity that I just described, and we're going to automate it as much as possible.
Well, I just mentioned, I saw something in Google recently about 80% of the news agencies in the world will have computer-generated content.
Yes.
In the very near future.
Yes. And that's why we launched a course on content curation.
Yeah.
Because look at what's happened. If you follow the trends of RSS means really simple syndication, RSS started to go away because people thought it was a replacement for the email systems. They missed that it was a way to completely automate anything under the sun. And with the dawn of something, sorry for a technical word, a pub-sub-a-bub, it's the new technology to make RSS much simpler so that we're not overloading all the servers with constant pinging. It's going to become even simpler to only draw on stuff. For example, Google Alert. Some of you watching are familiar with Google Alert. I can put any keyword into Google Alerts and be notified via an RSS feed whenever any new content on the whole universe comes out. That whole thing is now not run on RSS ping. They changed it over to pub-sub-up. That means that instead of hammering the crap out of Google for millions of people waiting for their alerts, they now go through a central data center that's waiting for those alerts, and they only ping you when it comes into being, and it doesn't have to crash Google's primary Google Alert server. So I'm oversimplifying things. My point is that the universe is changing, the Googleverse is changing, and it's changing in a way that automation, because people are curating stuff at the speed of thought, and people are publishing stuff, doing is the new planning. Where we used to plan all that content in the giant systems we're going to be showing you this week, now you can just create content at the speed of thought. Remember, curation means consumers are creators. Is it possible to create a product at the speed of thought? Absolutely. Is it possible to create content at the speed of thought? Yeah. Can you curate portions of an article that you created? If that article cost you $10, can you multiply the power of that article by 20 using RSS feeds by simply taking micro chunks from that article? Absolutely. If every one of those articles has a good headline because you've used the ADNA and VDNA system and each one of them is compelling, what you need to do is be able to look at your article and the keywords in that article and break it down into sentences that are highly tweetable. If you've written your article using ADNA, when you break it into micro chunks, you're going to have a highly clickable sentence every time. If you can get 80% of your article to be highly clickable sentence by sentence, you've used our painkiller article writing method. And when it's syndicated through social spaces, your click-through rate goes up 20 to 80%, depending upon how good your copywriting is. So that's what we're doing.
You have to create a system that takes chunks of your article and does like an URL shortener, but with your article content.
Well, we've written that.
Okay.
It's not released to the public, and it's called the Tweet Extractor System.
I
It's
wanna-
part of Domain Web Studio next release.
I want to back up to something that you said quite a bit earlier that's important, and I don't want to slide over it. You talked about needing a social media person to monitor your social media accounts. And there are some platforms that are more intense than others.
Yes.
And I would recommend that if a company is not in a position to monitor their social media extensively, that they avoid those intense conversation places, because you can end up getting a bad rap because your consumers perceive that you're not talking back to them, you're
Yes.
not engaging them. So places like Facebook, places like LinkedIn, you want to approach them from a limited perspective or not at all on the initial phase. We have phases that we run through when we're actually doing the launch. As we get into the launch area, we actually break that down into 3 different phases. And I would save those more intense conversational platforms until a later phase when you're up and running and you've got more resources available.
I think if you're talking about pain points for the client, it's more about they have an actual fear about the fact that, oh, you're plugging me into Facebook now and Twitter, and I really don't understand those spaces, but does that mean that I'm going to have to respond to those people every day and get hundreds of Facebook tweets of all this stuff coming in that I'm going to have to respond to? And, oh, I can't take care of that. Who's going to do that?
Right.
And I hear that over and over.
Right.
It's an interesting
Keep in mind that
thing.
my particular philosophy is 100% automation of the social spaces that can be automated. You speak, don't listen in those environments. That's very different than when we get more into that. There are environments where you must listen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested in them. For example, Facebook fan pages, you can turn off the talkback. They don't have to post comments. It's just like commenting in blogs. Commenting in blogs is turned into garbage. I don't use it. And the only time I use it is if I have certain filters in which they can respond and I know who they are, and they're a member of the blog using Facebook Connect. If they're a member, they've given me their authentic identity. Identity authentication is a real problem online right now. This is Jaron Lanier's book, You Are Not a Gadget. The problem that we have with it is that people fake their identities, and there's too much, you can get fake,
Too easily.
Yeah, like my hairdresser, for example, my haircut person that I go to, right? She does men's hair, she does Wright, the whole thing. Problem is that competition can talk back on her Yelp thing and leave false reviews. Okay, the answer to that, of course, is you create fake, real reviews. So I didn't want this conversation to go so much in social media management. I do not believe anymore, and this is a 360 from what I talk. Sue and I have some difference of opinions about this. I do not believe that you need to listen on your Facebook fan page. It's rubbish. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. It's not true. In fact, that's why they've made some of the changes to the Facebook fan page, because it's a platform. It's the same with Google pages. You can choose to engage, but Facebook did such a poor job of helping customer service on their fan pages that there's many thriving companies that do nothing but integrate Zendesk on Facebook. And see, this is my point. That's a two-way conversation, a help desk. I believe that social communities will be replaced by help desks. That's why Zendesk has a highly optimized social platform. Zendesk is the #1 help desk system in the world. It's because this rubbish about social community engagement, in order to get your primary HDMA brand messages out there as an autoresponder, a mantra, through the social amplifiers. Facebook fan page is a social amplifier, does not have to be a place to engage customer support. And if you want it to, you're going to have to increase the tools to use it as
Other resources.
Yeah.
Twitter, if people out there are on Twitter are saying bad things about your company, that's fine. That's not a social media manager. That's a brand
It's a
reputation manager.
management system.
And that's automated.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah, 'cause,
I've gone from social media to believing that this can all be automated via signals, via feeds.
yeah, what I was going to say is for every single company, they've got a different requirement. And depending on how they want to push their brand and how they want to speak to their audience, that will determine whether they engage or not. And, if they can't manage it like Sue said, then they shouldn't go into it if they're not ready.
Yeah, and I think it's our job as SEOs and consultants to help shape them in the right direction to make sure that they don't bite off more than they can chew or more than they can manage.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's right. Essentially YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and some companies, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually more problematic than Facebook, far more problematic. Because there's intelligent people on there that judge everything that you do, and it's a professional environment. It's very different than Facebook. Facebook to me is just a place to run your feeds of great messages that you've already pre-considered as appropriate for Facebook. So we'll get into this in the social media side, but I really don't believe that a social media manager is required for every company. Reputation manager is.
But here's the danger though, Russ. How's the reputation manager qualified with Facebook? Everyone's jumping on bandwagons, creating roles, but do they really understand the role, and are they aware of how they have to deal with the role?
It's a different topic.
This is the thing. So
it's a different topic.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is that we're not teaching reputation management in this course. It's a different course, and there are softwares that you use to monitor your reputation. That's the main thing. And when those negative things come in, you determine their value, and determine you verify the authenticity of the claim. But that's a full-time job.
Yes.
And social media managers usually involve a 23-year-old female who's really good with her iPhone. Those are not reputation management capacity. They're not qualified. In fact, most of the time I've discovered that they're essentially not qualified. What social media managers are good for is keeping the buzz juice going.
Yeah.
Pretty faces that are highly clickable and highly addictive, that are hired at hopefully more than minimum wage to just be all chipper and excited about what's going on. And that's really good. And in certain kinds of environments, that's amazing. I consider them marketers. They're buzz creators. They're engaging socially. They're your den mother. They're the person who is adding the female energy within the cybernetic system. Okay, they're actually trying to create a more human environment. And they're really, really good. An example of that is a client that we had in the online degree industry. Okay, they started immediately doing well when they took their social media manager, pretty gal, who understands really well how to use Facebook, Google+, and YouTube. What they weren't doing was getting her pretty face to talk about the keyword or the topic with a decent HDNA. I showed them how to do the HDNA and the ADNA, and if they hadn't given her that, she wouldn't have used that. She would have gone on about some random thing and, oh yeah, go back to college and blah, blah, blah. There would have been no focus. The key here is by the time you get up here, if you do hire, the social media manager choice begins here. Do you have somebody who can make your videos for you? Do you have somebody who can have a nice picture profile? Do you have somebody who's going to respond to the
Yeah,
posts?
that's part of the content audit process that I go through
Correct.
with all clients.
But your social media manager will have to have been educated
Yeah.
about these processes in order to be useful. If they're not, they're just another pretty face.
Yeah.
And you can hire models for that. So that's the issue. The difference between brand management, reputation management, and social media manager. Okay.
So, as you get into your launch mode, Domain Web Studio will tell you when you need to push your content through your primary ring. And that's phase one. You want to just start by pushing some content through everything. You check to see that everything is working, that your feeds are all going in the right places, everything's publishing properly, that the links are coming back to your
Give
site.
everything a chance to breathe.
Yeah, make sure that your analytics are working. And the second part of the launch is a hard launch. So now that you've got everything working, you actually start your real promotions. So you're pushing everything out through all of your syndication, through all of the WR1 and WRS1, and you start to build up the WR2 and the WRS2s. And that'll also expand your keyword DNA as you move out another ring. And so that's all in sort of that initial phase. So your WR1, WRS1 is full tilt boogie, and your WR2 rings are in an initial stage. And then the market domination stage is moving out to the third ring. I actually have never had a market that was so big that I needed to use the third ring.
I've only gone to WR1 and close to 2. I
Right.
haven't gone as far as 3 yet.
Right, I've never needed to go as far as 3. But the idea is that when you hit that market domination, you bring in as much of that third ring as you need to, and you've got everything spinning. So at that point, you've got content floating through all 3 rings. The stuff that you've got in your initial ring washes out a couple of weeks later, a few days to weeks into the second ring, and then it's echoed again into the third ring a little while later, so that that initial pebble that you drop in that middle ring will, over the course of up to 3 months, be repeated again and again and again through all 3 rings.
Mine like water.
Exactly. And so then your advertising, your marketing is expanded to its full reach. So Domain Web Studio tells you where and how to post everything, right? You work through your KDNA and how to post out into the social media, and then everything else happens automatically. So then layer 8 is the rinse and repeat. It's the perpetual keyword motion machine part of the PLMM system. So this whole thing is now on autopilot, and after a little bit you check your analytics, you make sure that you look for places where people are falling out of your funnel, places where people are leaving your websites seemingly prematurely. You shore up your funnels, you make sure that everything is working well, you look at your keywords that are performing in particularly well, and you expand on those ideas, and you just keep everything going, and that leads you to you everywhere.
Yeah. This guy's everywhere.
That's it. You fix the bug. Where there's leaks, you fix it. Where the optimization, the conversions are poor, you try and increase them. Where the engagement is weak, you try to strengthen it. And that's just your maintenance of your business. And if the guys get into a business mindset and they think about how we communicate with the clients, like you said, it was interesting earlier. Your client is saying, "How am I going to manage all this?" When he had to speak to his business or his clients. I just found that a very interesting statement when you said that, because it's like, these are your clients who will be spending money with you, but you want to talk to them.
And it's just, I keep hearing it over and over again. It's just the whole social fear just terrifies businesses. they don't, it's just this big hairy animal that they just don't understand and can't kind of digest, and I have to take them in and take components of what you're saying about this can be automated, and automated is a scary word for a lot of people because like on the search side, as soon as if you're selling the system to SEOs, if you say that word, you're setting yourself up for a problem because they hear the word automated, they think, oh, it's another one of those things that just goes out and like Scrapebox and does all that stuff.
Proof automation.
It's called,
Yeah.
it's actually, the technical term in cybernetics is humanization. So
Yeah.
it's called humanize. You can automate and humanize. That means random drip.
Yeah.
It also means if you've already humanized the headline before it goes out and it's proven, you're not worried about offending anybody because you already know that it's congruent with their values. And this is what people don't get. It's because everybody's shooting a shotgun to just a box of hair everywhere.
Well, I call it
That's
the
what they're
fishnet
doing.
mentality. It's basically just take the biggest fish net you can find and throw it as far as you can and see what you catch. And hopefully you catch enough stuff that's going to have an impact. And it's just totally the wrong approach. And I see it, people just, I had one guy who was at least 20 grand a month on PPC, just throwing the money out. And he's getting 1 to 2% conversion on that. And I'm just questioning the mentality of why he thinks that that's good for his business.
Because it's rolling.
Because the money's coming in and it's enough, just enough to keep them happy, you know?
Because the word is control.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is like social media can be controlled. Seo and I had a kind of a joke around the office. You can be controlled, right? Because that's the word. Like everybody should stop being afraid of saying it. It is 100% about control. Google doesn't care if you have control. Okay, not with their overall system. They're giving you pieces of control, but their profits come first.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to suggest is that if you teach your clients that control is not only possible, especially humanization with automation, meaning no automatic things that don't go out that do not meet the message. Google is actually designing a cybernetic business system whereby traffic signals with results with some social signals coming in there just to determine whether or not you're being consistent with your message. They're looking at consistency across the board. Consistent submission of content. Consistent things going out for Google+. Consistency in your message and the words used across various RSS feeds. All of it together is a form of automation. But if it becomes too automated, meaning it's exactly 1 o'clock at every second, then those are signals as well that you want to avoid.
Right.
So we call that humanization. So
Yeah, I mean, it's their scorecard approach, and
Yeah.
obviously they keep giving us little hints about how it works, but...
So we address the fears with clients of automation. If those are fear signals for them, you've got to say, look, when it comes to social media...
Oh, I'm saying it's not... For them, no. For SEOs, when they hear that word automation, a white hat SEO might take that as, oh, that's a black hat technique. They're using some kind of Scrapebox tool or some type of tool to do that. So I'm just saying, careful on who you're preaching to and how you're conveying the message.
Yeah, it does depend on who you're
Because
talking.
if I'm going out as an affiliate to sell your program and products to other SEOs who I look up to, I want to know that I'm conveying the right message to them, and that message is this is a humanized automation system.
Yeah,
that
that is the word.
it's meeting them on the right on two playing fields, on the SEO engine's requirements and the human aspect.
Yeah, and that's why we have to create new words. Like,
Yeah.
for example, that's why we're doing this. Humanization, has been around for a while. Several of my friends who create WordPress plugins and automated systems, there's a new toggle switch inside of those applications. It's called Humanize.
Yeah.
And as soon as I click that, what it does, it generates a randomized things to make sure that the cron job doesn't hit the same time every day.
Yeah.
And this is becoming more and more popular. And the irony is that many of the signals that I'm using in some of those softwares, they're 100% social traffic signals anyways, which means Google doesn't care. But you can't explain that to the SEOs who still think that social signals are not part of it. So it's really
It's
interesting.
interesting, yeah. I
We'll come up
think
with new words.
that fence, I think we're over that crossing the chasm approach. I think now I think it is serious now. I think most of the SEOs that I know and work with, they get it now. They know that they have to be doing that with all of their clients. And the ones that don't, well, I don't really pay attention to that. I bounce off.
And one thing for people watching that I want to emphasize here is on one conversation we just had, we're speaking to SEOs.
Yes.
Okay, the other conversation we had, we're speaking to clients. Two very, very different worlds.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind, is like finding those fewer words and the rest.